Hi YouTube, part 4, Aerocommander UMX LED project. We had the green on the wrong side, since switched red, and installed the landing light on both sides. You saw the way the process worked with both, so I didn't want to bore you with a repeat. Now, next on the docket is a tail light, a white tail light. Now I want it to be here. Now one thing about this tail light is you'll notice there's a seam here. And that seam is important because we were able to chase our wires for the other unit, the other lights, just along this carbon fiber spar, and it worked out real nicely and almost indistinguishable. Still got to terminate the leads, of course, but I'm probably going to need to reach all the way back in here and poke a hole to go from where we want the light, which is as high up. That still looks good. And then we need the wires to go straight through. And what that's going to do is when we have to separate this to do repairs or work on the flaps or whatever it happens to be, we'll be safe. Now, if you see that red line way at the back, that's the seam between the top and the bottom halves. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to get my passage cut first, which I don't always do it first, but it seems like when I do the tail, sometimes I shoot myself in the foot to a certain extent because I forget to do the channel first, and then I have nowhere to put the wire. So normally I would want to do a hot wire for something like this, and that's probably what we might do now, but I'm a little bit reluctant to do a hot wire in this case because a hot wire might get too big a hole given the size of our leads is so small. But one thing about it is if you have too small of a hole, you're going to have a heck of a time getting the wires through anyway. So why don't we just try that first and hope for the best. Okay, so we're going to heat up this wire. Make sure you're not going to catch any planes on above. Make it glow. Bring it over here and plunge it in. Okay, so I'm out now. And that was way too big a hole, which is something I was concerned about, but not the end of the world. Now, why is that not a big deal? Well, it's not a big deal because when I'm done I can just put a little piece of foam or a piece of cotton in there. Okay, so this LED is a white LED and it's shaped like the other ones. Longwise is probably what we're going to do. I'm going to make a bit of a kind of a 90-degree exit for the wires and just kind of hold this sideways and pull those two leads close. And I want to protect the leads, pull them kind of straight, make sure I can see my definitive black mark for the negative lead, and then I'm just going to start shooting it through and see if we get lucky. If this doesn't work, I have a backup plan. The backup plan is quite easy. It's called mount it to something and then stick it through. Now what I might do on this one, just for ease sake, is I might just take one at a time. Problem with the solid core wires, it's got just enough stiffness that it'll catch on every possible thing. Okay, so it's in. It's not all the way to the front, but that's okay. We can grab it with the forceps and pull it up toward the front. You can see, I don't know if you guys can see in that vent, but there's the first wire wiggling. This one's wanting to catch everything, of course. Now the other thing is we could just tape these together somehow. Of course you got to have a tape that's small enough to pass through the hole, so, or you can just be patient and get it, which I think I did that time. Pretty sure it made it through. And I'll just push both in a ways. Now we have to go ahead and flip around the plane. And I see both of them. If you guys can make them out down there, I can see them both. So now I just have to figure out a way to grab that far down in there, which might be a little easier said than done even with the forceps. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to reach that far. See, because my handle's in there. So, with that being said, the other option is to try to hook the wire with a little something like this, but keeping in mind, hooks are not the most successful thing because you're trying to grab onto an individual wire. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys aren't going to see this very good, so I apologize in advance. Of course, it looks like both wires made it so that they're tied up. They're tied up around the elevator rudder. What is that? The elevator that goes to the left. I don't know why that happened, but whatever. It did, so. And I'm real sorry, guys. You just aren't going to probably see this. What I'm doing is I'm just kind of spinning. Okay, so I got that pulled up. Now I can use the forceps. Now this is just a negative lead. And I'm trying to be mindful of the route that I'm taking, because I want to try to be able to control it away from the servos. Because those little linear servos there, the gears are going to move and they could catch up with this wire and potentially compromise the servo, which would be horrible. It looks like we have only a couple of inches left of play there. So I'll have to be careful now that I don't cause another problem for myself. Okay, there we go. Set it back like that. I'm real sorry, guys. It's kind of hard to get an angle for you guys to see while I'm doing this stuff. Okay, got it. Okay, so that's pulled out. Not a horrific location or pattern getting up here. So now I just kind of have to follow and chase back there and kind of in the same orientation. And again, it's one of these things where you guys probably aren't going to see real hot for this. For a second, I got to pull the camera away so I can see my own face in there. And see, we've got that thing, how we're just kind of riding in there. Oh, son of a gun, I dropped it. Okay, so you can see I'm way back in there. So I'm just trying to spin. I can't hardly even see myself. Okay, sorry, you guys are just going to have to listen to me narrate for a minute. Oh, look at that. I think I might have... Oh, shoot, I missed it. So close. So close, guys. I almost had it. This is quite tricky. I need to use my right hand for this. Now this side is being a little bit more of a pain because while I'm not sure why it's being so much more difficult, there we go, got it. Okay, so there it is. That stuff was actually quite easy to get. I can't believe how easy that was. I've struggled for like hours doing that before. Okay, so there you have it. There's your tail light. So now I just got to try to manipulate the slack through real quick and easy. It's a little awkward still, because if you yank on it, you'll put a big knot. You'll put a big knot in this. See that loop? You got to try to very carefully take those loops out, or you will get nasty knots. Okay, that's good enough. So now we don't want that to pull into the aircraft either. That would be bad. So that's going to glue right there on the top of that whole area. Just like that. It's kind of cool actually. It's almost like an exhaust for an APU. I don't think there's an APU on this plane. It'd be a little small for that. Well, there might be an APU, but it's certainly not a turbine APU like what you'd have on the Airbus A330 that looks like this. There's an APU, guys. Got an exhaust vent, and there's an access hatch under there in real life. And they can actually go up there with a little lift and work on the small engine. An APU is an auxiliary power unit, which usually is used for running air conditioning and large electrical appliances while they're getting ready to start up the main engines, and also acts as a backup power source in the event of an engine failure on the big airliners, at least. I don't know if they have auxiliary power units on the smaller ones like this. Kind of expect they don't. Okay, so I'm satisfied with that. Maybe I want it to go just a little teeny bit more downhill, so I'll keep it in the same spot and just squish it in a little bit more into the foam. Just kind of push it in a little bit. Okay, cool. So now we need to glue that. So we'll get our foam safe glue back out. So guys, this is part 4 of the video series for the LEDs on the Aero Commander, you know, and always bums me out when I make stupid mistakes like when I ran that green on the wrong side, but kind of a happy accident because ended up getting good success out of it. Okay, so if you've never seen one of my LED videos, I'll show you how I turn this light into as much or as close to 360 degrees of visibility as possible. And this is the trick. First of all, you glue a lot around it. Second of all, you actually get yourself a drip that makes a little round like this. And once you have kicker on there, then you can kind of turn this into a lens. You'd be surprised how effective that lens will be. And you just kind of hold the plane so that it makes the drip shape the way you want. It's pretty simple when it's a small plane like this. When it's a big, huge, like a 2 whatever meter plane, it gets a little bit tricky. Okay, so then once you get your drips from that angle, you come around and you kind of do the same thing. In this case, I need to seal off these wires too, so I'm just going to put quite a bit up into that bung hole there. I wouldn't mind actually leaving that opened. So I'm just going to let this drip. It's probably going to run out from that hole. Dang it. I was afraid of that. Oh no, 2 drips. Dang it. 2 drips. Come on. 3 drips. That's kicker. Now I'm going to tip it so that it falls back downward. You can even see the light being distributed. It's now, if you want, you can reshape this a little bit while it's sort of wet-ish. I think I probably missed the boat on that. Now, you can also take and sand that down if you want to try to make it diffuse the lamp light even better. But I think I'm just going to fill in that hole right now, because it's almost full as it is. This whole end is going to glow, which is exactly what we want. The function of a tail light, in my opinion, on a plane like this, in radio control plane, of course, is mostly utilitarian. Even though it's a scale feature on this plane, and it is on many planes, this is something I want for flyability. Okay, cool. So we've got that in. So now, basically, while we're at it, while we're doing drips of LED drips, so we're going to come back up here on the red. You can kind of see how it's paint, like the direction it's facing. Now, one thing I'm going to warn you about is when you do your first drip, very, very sparing on kicker, because sometimes the kicker will squish the dome too much. And when I say the dome, I mean when you make a drip, it makes it round. So very small amount of kicker. And what my objective on the wingtips is to get that thing to be visible from all angles. In real life, it would be, you know, this area here, because you'd only want it to really be forward facing. But in our case, we're going to use this for flying, you know, evening flying and things like that. So if it makes the whole wing glow a little bit, I'm not going to be upset. I do want it to look scale, but I'm more concerned about utilitarian. Very sparing on the wingtips for a variety of reasons. Okay, so let's let that set up. That turned out pretty nice. If you guys ever wonder how frustrating it is to try to get an autofocus to work, just use a smartphone once. It's like, let's focus on everything but what's in front of us. There we go, finally. Jeez. You see that outline against the white backdrop there? That's what it's going to do. It's going to distribute the light nicely. So now we're going to do the same thing over here on the green. One nice big drip at the beginning to kind of get us that basic dome shape. Shoot, my drip fell. It dripped off. So I'm going to soak that up actually. Now you can use kicker first if you want to. Sometimes that helps if you're trying to get things set up nicely and quick. My experience is then the drip will just collapse upon itself really quick. being surprisingly cooperative. Sometimes these things don't drip the way you want them to. Not even close usually. You end up having some drips that don't quite go exactly the way you want them to, but you get better every time you do it. Just like most everything. Okay, so let it drip down, and you see we're starting to get that cool teardrop shape. And by the way, if you guys are using CA and you're not using Kicker, you're crazy. Go get some. I didn't use Kicker for years, mostly because I didn't understand that it existed. But since I've been flying, I've been using it virtually the whole time. And it's just one of those things that, if you're not using it, it's just such an awesome tool. I mean, CA is already a pretty awesome tool as it is. But then you turn around and add the ability to have it set up in, like, seconds. It's huge. It's huge. Alright, so now we got all these wires. What a mess. So here's what we got to do, guys. We got to terminate all these leads, and we want to do it in a way that does not prevent us from separating the top and bottom halves. Keeping in mind that that back portion is in fact going to be on the top, folks. It's on the top. So it can be attached with the rest. Nice. That was something I didn't recognize at the beginning, but I'm glad I noticed, because that's handy. That'll be a lot easier than trying to have them on the bottom. So now I'm going to take, and I'm actually going to reorganize this wire up on top of those two, or I might just try to move those two servo cables, which incidentally I believe they're the aileron cables. So I'm just going to try to move the aileron cables over and down to get this wire so it's up on top. Okay, guys. Okay. So now I've got those so they can be on top together. All of them. Okay, so it's coming out super nice. The trouble is now I need to figure out how I'm going to reattach these all to what line exactly. Because I'm okay attaching it to one of the servo wires for the top. That would be probably the best, the most beneficial long-term solution. So I think for now, we're probably just going to, even if it ends up being temporary, that's fine. I can live with that. Funny story, guys. I dripped a bunch of CA on the floor, and now my sock is stuck to my foot. It's awesome. No extra charge for that, guys. Okay, so this is just going to kind of help us to keep things tamed while we're working. We may cut it off a little bit later, but for now it's going to help a lot. Well, that's going to be such a light thing. I don't think it's probably going to be a big issue. Oh, we got to get the iron cooking, guys. Soldering iron was disconnected because we haven't been soldering for quite some time. We've been installing recently. Okay. So now, really, getting these wires terminated is less critical to me than doing it in a manner that allows us to tuck it back and keep out of the way of the LiPo installation. Because when you've got your flight pack in there, you don't want to have to be fighting to gain access to these things. Okay. Now, the other thing is, we're going to have to differentiate. You notice I labeled 2 of these, which should help us to very easily differentiate the rest of them. Okay. So the first things first, I think we need to go ahead and verify the tail light. That is definitely the tail light. Okay. So the tail light's definitely this short one. Okay. So I'm going to probably go ahead and grab some masking tape to label that. And at this point, I'm going to be reverting from my original sloppy taping to small taping so that I can potentially leave these labels on. It does get a little bit hard to keep this stuff straight later on. It's not necessarily so bad the day you're doing it, but like in 6 months when you have a crash, or a year, or whatever it is, you know, you probably have had some effort placed other places in that time frame, so you may not remember. It's a good idea to try and label it if you can. Ultrafine Sharpie. So this is the white taillight. Okay, so WT. Notice it's not WTF, it's just WT. Okay, so then we've got two others that clearly go to this wing, and it would be noteworthy to determine which one's which. Well, that's interesting. Oh, they go to this wing, guys. I'm sorry. So this here would be one set. Okay, so it looks like this might be the other. Uh-oh. Oh, there it is. Okay, so there's the other set. Okay, so this set is probably going to be, because we have the little toothpick on there, that would have been the one from out here. So that's our green navigation light. So we'll go ahead and do the same thing with the label. I could use some colored tape, but that just would be way too easy. We don't do this to avoid challenges. We do it for pain and suffering. Okay, here we go. Got it? Okay, so now I want this label to be approximately at the same spot when it's all said and done. It's a little bit bigger than it needs to be. That's fine. We'll trim it down once we tape it onto itself. Okay. And then by process of elimination, we can definitively tell what this pair does, and that's going to be for the landing light, the white landing light. Okay, so this is green, and then this is white landing light. That's one of two. See how that says WLL? That's the other one. So we're going to go ahead and get two more small pseudo labels going here. We'll cut it this way this time. And it's all these little steps that take tons of time, but they do make it a little bit easier. Hopefully they won't be a huge waste of time. That's also a possibility. WLL, WLL. So this one's going to be on the left side, and that one's on the right side. It's going to get confusing. I started adding too many more letters, so I'm just going to leave it as is. Now this masking tape incidentally was kind of hard to get on and off, so hopefully I don't compromise my wiring when I cut this, but I'll just be careful. Okay, and since it's hard to get off, that means it should be pretty effective as a label. Okay, so there's our other label. Of course it's stuck to my finger. Alright, so here's our red. And let's see if we're tangled. No, we're not tangled. We're fine. Okay, so we'll throw an R on here. Okay. Now we need to get some terminations done. And it looks like we're about out of time here, guys. So we're going to be coming back to you with part number 5 on the Aero Commander UMX LED lighting project. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe.